Dr. Rachel Carter paced the narrow floor of the NASA Brain Science Division meeting room, her heart racing as she thought about the implications of the challenge she was about to set in motion. She glanced at the clock. It was late, but the room was filled with energy and focus as her team worked on final preparations. The walls around them were adorned with equations, brain diagrams, and star charts, the very tools they hoped would guide humanity's future into deep space. Yet the challenge before them had very little to do with solving equations and everything to do with the human mind. Her shoes clicked against the polished floor as she walked back and forth. Every step felt weighted with the importance of the decision she was about to make. This wasn't just any test. This was a test that could change everything. A long conference table sat in the middle of the room, with 7 empty chairs and one occupied by Dr. Samuel Rhodes, the director of the division. He was a man known for his steady hand in guiding some of NASA's most groundbreaking research. His expression, however, was less than steady tonight. There was a blend of excitement and nervous anticipation in his eyes, and Rachel could sense it as she stopped pacing and turned to face him. "Are we really going to do this, Samuel?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper, as if the gravity of the question might carry far beyond these walls. Samuel exhaled, looking up from the tablet in front of him. "We don't have much choice. We need a solution for Mars. The current crew models and brainwave patterns we've tested just won't be enough to deal with prolonged exposure to space radiation. Musk claims to have the answer to that, but we won't know for sure until we see how his brain works under stress." Rachel ran a hand through her dark hair, pushing back the thoughts that were clouding her mind. For weeks, Elon Musk had been all over the news, confidently stating that his brain was optimized for space travel and that NASA's scientists were thinking far too small. To most, it sounded like yet another publicity stunt from a billionaire inventor, but Rachel knew there was more to it than that. Elon Musk wasn't just spouting off for the media, he had a theory. And that theory might be the key to saving astronauts from the potentially deadly effects of space radiation. Rachel had seen the effects of that radiation firsthand. Her father, an astronaut who had gone on one of the first missions beyond Earth's orbit, had returned to Earth only to slowly lose his cognitive abilities. At first, the symptoms seemed harmless: forgetfulness, a lack of focus, mood swings. But soon it became clear that the radiation from deep space had left irreversible damage to his brain. His mind had deteriorated rapidly until he was no longer the man she had known. No one had understood what was happening at the time. It wasn't until Rachel began working with NASA that she realized the full scope of the issue. "His brain, Samuel," Rachel said quietly, her thoughts trailing to the past. "He doesn't understand what he's really being asked to do. No one outside this division understands the radiation problem. Not like we do. He might be the smartest man alive, but he doesn't know the dangers. He's never been in space." Samuel nodded, understanding the gravity of her statement. "And that's exactly why this test needs to be a surprise. If he knows what we're really studying, he'll alter his approach. We need raw, genuine data, no shortcuts." Rachel's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. Her father's memory lingered in her mind. She couldn't bear the thought of another generation of astronauts going through the same ordeal, losing their minds to an invisible enemy. But Musk, his brain might be the key to everything. If his cognitive patterns were naturally resistant to the effects of radiation, perhaps NASA could find a way to protect other astronauts on long-term missions. "I want to send the invitation now," Rachel said, her voice resolute. "But we need to make it public. He won't be able to refuse if the world is watching." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "You're sure about that?" Rachel nodded. "He's a showman. His ego won't allow him to back down from a challenge like this." Within minutes, Rachel had approved the message. It was simple but would send waves through the media. NASA Brain Science Division challenges Elon Musk to take the advanced cognitive assessment. Will he accept? Rachel hit send, and the challenge was released into the world. The response was immediate. Headlines across the globe flashed with the news: "Battle of the Brains, Elon Musk versus NASA scientists." It didn't take long for the public to take notice. As the minutes ticked by, Rachel felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What had she just set in motion? Within an hour, Elon Musk had replied. The message was brief and confident. "Test approved. I'll take it live. Prepare to be amazed." The media exploded. News channels everywhere reported on the event. The internet buzzed with speculation. Would Musk succeed, or would he finally meet his match? The world waited breathlessly for the moment of truth. Rachel sat back in her chair, staring at the flood of social media posts and news coverage. The public thought this was just a simple competition of intellect. Musk, the famous entrepreneur, taking on NASA's brightest minds. What they didn't understand was that this test wasn't about proving who was smarter. This test was about something far more important. If Musk succeeded, he could offer NASA the breakthrough it needed to make human space travel to Mars and beyond a reality. "I can't believe it's actually happening," Dr. Lily Matthews, a member of Rachel's team, said as she glanced over Rachel's shoulder. Her bright yellow dress was a stark contrast to the sterile white walls of the conference room, but her excitement was palpable. Rachel nodded but said nothing. Her thoughts were elsewhere. She knew that this test, Musk's participation, was the chance they had been waiting for. If he scored high enough, it could confirm the existence of a cognitive pattern that would help protect astronauts from radiation. If Musk's mind was truly resistant to space radiation, NASA might be able to develop a defense for others. It could be a game changer. "I'll start preparing the test now," Lily said. "It's going to be a long few days. The whole world will be watching." Rachel's fingers tapped anxiously on the table. She didn't know if Musk truly understood the risks of space radiation. The media had painted this challenge as a simple showdown of egos, but Rachel knew the stakes were far higher than anyone realized. They weren't just testing Musk's intelligence. They were testing humanity's future in space. As she walked out of the meeting room, Rachel looked up at the stars through the large glass windows. Mars was just a speck in the sky, a red dot that symbolized humanity's greatest hope and its greatest challenge. She whispered to herself, "We're coming, Dad. We'll get there. We'll make it happen. Just not the way everyone thinks." The following day, as the sun rose over NASA headquarters, Dr. Rachel Carter found herself standing in the same meeting room where her world had begun to shift. The challenge had been sent, and now the media frenzy was in full swing. News outlets were predicting everything from Musk's potential failure to his groundbreaking success. But as Rachel looked out over the team assembled in the conference room, her mind was far from the press coverage. It was fixed on something more urgent. She could feel the weight of her decision. Musk had agreed to the challenge, and in doing so, he had unwittingly set in motion a series of events that could change the course of human space exploration forever. But how far would it go? And what would it reveal about the human mind and its limits? "Are we ready?" Rachel asked, turning to Dr. Samuel Rhodes, who was standing by the large conference table, reviewing the final preparations. Samuel nodded, though his face was etched with concern. "The test is prepared, but there's still so much we don't know about Musk. I've had my doubts about this approach, Rachel, but if we're going to succeed with the Mars mission, we need data. Real data." Rachel's mind drifted to her father. She remembered watching him slowly deteriorate after his return from deep space, his mind fractured by an invisible enemy: radiation. It had stolen his memories, his sharp wit, his ability to recognize faces. His cognitive decline had been a slow burn, one that no one had fully understood until the scientific community started unraveling the mystery of space radiation's effects on the brain. Rachel couldn't bear to watch the same thing happen to the next generation of astronauts, but at the same time, she knew that if they didn't do this, humanity's exploration of space might remain limited to the confines of Earth's orbit forever. "We're not just testing intelligence here, Samuel," Rachel said, her voice firm. "This test could reveal something we haven't even begun to understand: how the brain adapts to the extreme conditions of deep space. If Musk's brain is truly capable of resisting the effects of radiation, then it could lead to an entirely new way of protecting astronauts. And that's what we need more than anything." Samuel glanced at her, his eyes reflecting the same determination she felt. "I just hope we're not setting ourselves up for disappointment." Meanwhile, across the hall, Dr. Lily Matthews, the youngest member of the brain science team, was finishing the final touches on the cognitive assessment system. Lily, who had designed the hardest portions of the test, was known for her meticulous attention to detail. Growing up in a small town in Ohio, she had always been fascinated by puzzles and problem solving, And that drive had propelled her to the top of her field. Today, she sat at her workstation, double-checking the algorithms that powered the test. "It's all set," she said, tapping away on her computer screen. "I've made sure the AI is ready to generate new problems on the fly. There's no way Musk can predict what's coming." Rachel walked over to Lily's desk, her mind still heavy with the task ahead. "Good work. Just make sure we're ready to collect all the data. This is more than just a test of intelligence. We need to map how Musk's brain reacts to the cognitive challenges. We need to understand every response, every neural pattern." Lily nodded, her face serious. "I understand. This test isn't about who wins or loses. It's about the data. This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for." As the final preparations were made, Rachel's phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Elon Musk. The message was short and to the point. "I'm ready. See you at 9 a.m. sharp. Prepare to be amazed." Rachel set the phone down, taking a deep breath. The stage was set. The whole world would be watching. At 9 a.m. the next day, the testing room was buzzing with nervous anticipation. The room, designed specifically for the test, was equipped with high-tech EEG sensors that would monitor every subtle change in brain activity. The walls were lined with screens that displayed real-time data from the cognitive assessment system. Rachel stood in the observation room next door, her hands clasped tightly in front of her as she watched the preparations unfold. "Elon Musk is about to walk through that door," Samuel said, standing beside her, "and we still don't know if he's for real." Rachel's gaze remained fixed on the entrance. "We will soon enough. His performance will tell us everything we need to know." As if on cue, the door to the testing room opened, and Elon Musk walked in, dressed casually in a black t-shirt and jeans. His confident stride matched the media persona he had cultivated over the years. Effortless, sure, and calm. He smiled at the team and gave a small wave to the cameras that were set up to broadcast the entire event. "Good morning, everyone," Musk said in a relaxed tone. "I'm ready to begin. Let's see what you've got." Rachel observed him closely. There was no sign of hesitation, no sign of nervousness. To the public, this would look like a normal test, but Rachel knew better. This was far more than a simple test of intelligence. The implications of this assessment were profound. If Musk scored well, it would suggest that his brain had unique cognitive traits that might offer humanity the ability to adapt to deep space radiation. As Musk settled into the chair, the sensors were carefully attached to his forehead and temples. A technician explained the test format, which would consist of 5 progressively difficult sections. Each section was designed to test different cognitive abilities: pattern recognition, problem solving, spatial reasoning, and creativity. "Elon, this will measure how you solve complex problems, adapt to new information, and think critically under pressure," the technician explained. Musk nodded. "Sounds good. Let's begin." The test started. The first section was a set of pattern recognition problems designed to test how quickly and accurately Musk could identify patterns in a series of images. Rachel watched as Musk quickly navigated through the questions, his fingers tapping the screen with a rapid precision that left no room for error. He seemed unfazed by the complexity of the questions. "That's remarkable," Rachel murmured. "I've never seen anyone move this quickly through this section." As the test progressed into more difficult sections, Rachel felt a knot form in her stomach. In Section 2, Musk tackled 3D visualization and spatial reasoning challenges that were designed to overwhelm even the most experienced thinkers. But Musk was calm, his answers coming faster than anyone could have predicted. This is not normal," Lily whispered, her eyes wide as she watched the data unfold on her tablet. "The patterns, his brain activity is almost too perfect." Rachel frowned. "Something's not right. His responses are too precise. There's no hesitation. It's like he's anticipating the answers before the questions fully appear." They moved to the next section, the adaptive problem-solving module. In this part of the test, the questions changed in real time based on Musk's responses. The system adapted, making the problems more complex as he progressed. Rachel held her breath as she watched the data stream in. But again, Musk was unflappable. His brain patterns were almost too regular, like a finely tuned machine. As the test moved into the more complex final sections, it became clear that Musk was moving through the test faster than anyone thought possible. His answers weren't just correct, they were novel. He was solving problems that even the test designers hadn't anticipated. In the observation room, Rachel exchanged worried glances with Samuel. Something was going on that they couldn't explain. It was as if Musk's brain wasn't just processing information, it was rewriting the test itself. "Elon is breaking the system," Rachel muttered. "This is far beyond what we expected." As the test continued, the tension in the observation room grew palpable. Elon Musk's performance was nothing short of extraordinary. He was moving through the sections with an ease that left Rachel and her team in stunned silence. What had originally seemed like a routine test had quickly become something else entirely. Every problem Musk faced, he solved with near-perfect accuracy, and his brain activity was equally remarkable. His neural patterns were almost impossibly symmetrical and organized, unlike any other test subject they had observed. Elon's brain waves. "These patterns are unlike anything we've seen before," Dr. Lily Matthews whispered as she checked her tablet. The screen showed a real-time analysis of Musk's brain activity, and it was almost too perfect. "This isn't human." Rachel couldn't take her eyes off the data. Every section seemed to get harder, but Musk showed no signs of slowing down. His reactions were immediate, almost preemptively calculated. In the adaptive problem-solving section, where most test subjects struggled to adjust to new variables, Musk's responses were flawless. It was as though his mind was anticipating the shifts in real time. "It's like he's a step ahead," Samuel Rhodes muttered under his breath, clearly astonished. Rachel's heart raced as she watched him breeze through the final section. Synthetic creativity and adaptive consciousness. This part was designed to test how well the brain could adapt not only to changing information, but to completely new paradigms. The algorithms in the system were designed to produce challenges that were theoretically unsolvable, pushing the limits of human cognitive ability. Yet Musk wasn't just solving them. He was creating solutions that even the test had not anticipated. "What's going on?" Rachel asked aloud, her voice a mix of awe and concern. "Is he cheating?" Lily shook her head, her face pale. "It's impossible. These problems are generated by an AI in real time. They've never existed before today. There's no way he could have practiced for them." As the final problems of the test appeared on the screen, Musk's answers began to push the limits of the test design. Rachel had designed the quantum relationship mapping portion of the test to be unsolvable. It was meant to show the limits of a human brain's ability to process complex, interdependent relationships across multiple dimensions. Yet Musk was breezing through it, the score climbing higher and higher. The data was beyond what Rachel had imagined. "This is wrong," Rachel murmured. "No one has ever made it this far with such a high score. Something is off." Musk's score climbed to 98, then 99. As the final seconds of the test ticked down, Rachel was on the edge of her seat. The tension in the room was thick. Would he break the test's algorithm? Would he push the system to rewrite its own scoring parameters? A soft chime signaled the end of the test. The room fell silent as the results began to process. For a few moments, it seemed like time had stopped. Rachel glanced at Samuel and Lily, who were both holding their breath. She felt a knot tighten in her chest. Musk had undoubtedly broken records. But how? The score flashed on the screen, 99.8 out of 100. Rachel's eyes widened in disbelief. "That's impossible." The room erupted into murmurs of confusion and shock. A perfect score had never been achieved. And yet here it was, a score higher than anything anyone at NASA had ever imagined. How did he do this?" Lily asked, her voice trembling. "This test wasn't supposed to allow for a perfect score?" Rachel stood motionless, staring at the data. Something wasn't adding up. Musk's score was off the charts, but there were too many questions left unanswered. The test had been designed with fail-safes, built-in limits to prevent a perfect score. Yet Musk had managed to breach those boundaries. His cognitive abilities weren't just exceptional, they were otherworldly. "What's going on, Rachel?" Samuel asked, his voice strained. "What does this mean?" Rachel didn't answer immediately. Instead, she grabbed her tablet and ran a detailed analysis of Musk's brain activity during the test. His patterns weren't just highly organized, they were eerily symmetrical. The system had never seen anything like it. But that wasn't the only anomaly. She glanced down at the data again, her stomach dropping. No, she whispered to herself. It can't be. Minutes later, Rachel stood in the hallway outside the testing room, staring at her tablet. Samuel and Lily were with her, but Rachel felt completely alone as the implications of what she was seeing sank in. Elon Musk had been using something, a technology or enhancement, during the test. There was no other explanation. His brain activity was too precise, too perfect to be purely natural. Rachel, what's going on? Lily asked. What are you seeing? Rachel didn't answer immediately. She was still trying to process the data. The thought that kept running through her mind was the same. Musk had used some kind of neural enhancement. But how? And why? I'm going to confront him, Rachel said finally, her voice determined. We need to know exactly what he's been doing. Inside the testing room, Elon Musk was seated calmly, a small, satisfied smile on his face as he waited for the results. His demeanor was so relaxed that it almost seemed out of place. As the team entered the room, Musk looked up, his eyes sparkling with the same confidence he had shown during the entire test. Impressive, he said with a chuckle, clearly enjoying the moment. Did I pass? Rachel felt a wave of frustration flood over her. She couldn't just let him walk out of here without answers. Elon, she said, stepping forward, there's something we need to discuss. Your score, it's unlike anything we've ever seen before. Musk raised an eyebrow, his smile never faltering. I don't think I did anything unusual. I just did what I do best. Think outside the box. Rachel's eyes narrowed. You didn't just think outside the box. You broke the box. I want to know how you did it. Musk's expression shifted slightly, but only for a moment. I'm sure you have your theories, he said, leaning back in the chair. But I think you're overlooking something important. The test was designed to measure intelligence and cognitive flexibility, right? It wasn't just about answering questions. It was about understanding how a mind works under pressure. Rachel pressed on. We designed the test with specific fail-safes. It wasn't meant to allow for a perfect score. Yet here you are, with a 99.8. How did you do it? Musk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down at his hands as if contemplating his next words. When he spoke again, it was with a more serious tone. You're looking at it the wrong way, he said quietly. The brain can only do so much on its own. You have to unlock its potential. I'm not just using my brain, I'm using a technology to enhance it. Neuralink. Rachel's heart skipped a beat. The answer had been right in front of her all along. Musk had been using his own neural enhancement technology, the same technology he had developed to interface with the brain. You've been using Neuralink during the test? Rachel asked, her voice a mixture of shock and realization. Musk nodded. Yes, it's a cognitive enhancement device. It boosts brain function, allowing for faster processing and better adaptability to complex situations. I didn't think it would give me a perfect score, but, well, I guess I underestimated it. Rachel stared at him, stunned. This wasn't just a test of intelligence. It was a demonstration of the potential of Musk's technology. The neural enhancements were not just improving cognitive ability, they were altering the way the brain functioned. You've been hiding this, Rachel said, her voice barely a whisper. For how long? Musk gave a small smile. Long enough to know that the world isn't ready for it yet, but now I think it's time we change that. Rachel stood still for a moment, processing what Musk had just revealed. The realization hit her like a wave. His cognitive enhancements were far beyond what she had imagined. Neuralink wasn't just some brain-computer interface. It was something far more powerful, something that could alter the very way the brain processed information, adapting it to the extreme demands of deep space travel. Musk wasn't just a man with a sharp mind. He had a mind that had been augmented by technology, pushing the boundaries of human potential. You've been using Neuralink the whole time? Rachel repeated, trying to understand the full scope of what Musk was saying. You've been enhancing your brain with your own technology during this test? Musk didn't look embarrassed or guilty. He simply nodded, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Yes, Neuralink allows the brain to process information faster and more efficiently. It's a system designed to improve cognitive function, particularly for tasks that demand high-level processing, like the challenges in this test. Rachel's mind was racing. She had suspected something, but she had never considered this possibility. Musk's brain wasn't just genetically gifted, it was artificially enhanced. She had spent so much time trying to understand how the brain adapts to space radiation, how astronauts' minds are altered by deep space, but now she was faced with the unsettling truth that Musk's brain was operating on an entirely different level. "This changes everything," Rachel said quietly. "We were testing human potential under the assumption that we were measuring normal, organic intelligence. But what you've just shown us is a whole new category." Musk smiled slightly. "Maybe, or maybe it's just the next step in human evolution. If we're going to survive and thrive in space, we need to rethink what it means to be human." Rachel couldn't help but feel a twinge of anger at the deception. He had known all along. His participation had been more than just proving his genius. It had been about showcasing his technology, testing it in the most public way possible, and now the whole world would see him as the undisputed winner of a battle that wasn't really a battle at all. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice a mix of frustration and disbelief. "Why didn't you share this before the test?" Musk's expression softened. "You wouldn't have understood the full implications. I didn't want this to become about the technology. I wanted it to be about the mind, the potential that's already there, waiting to be unlocked. The technology is just a tool. The real question is, what happens when the human mind is allowed to function at its fullest?" Rachel felt conflicted. On the one hand, she understood Musk's drive, his desire to push the boundaries of what was possible. On the other, she knew that this kind of advancement came with risks. The potential benefits were enormous, but so were the dangers. What if this kind of enhancement went wrong? What if it led to unforeseen consequences, altering the very fabric of human consciousness? "And what about the radiation problem?" Rachel asked, her thoughts returning to the core issue. "How does Neuralink address the radiation issue? You told us your brain was optimized for space. How much of that is thanks to Neuralink?" Musk's gaze became more focused, his eyes narrowing as if he were considering how much to reveal. "Neuralink isn't just a cognitive enhancer. It's designed to protect the brain from external damage, like radiation. When you're in space, your brain is constantly being bombarded by cosmic radiation. Most astronauts' brains adapt, but it's a slow process, and over time, the damage accumulates. Neuralink, however, allows the brain to repair itself in real time. The cognitive enhancement isn't just a byproduct, it's a direct response to the way the brain adapts to external threats like radiation." Rachel blinked, stunned by what he was suggesting. "So Neuralink isn't just improving brain function, it's actively protecting the brain from radiation?" "Exactly," Musk said. "It's a regenerative system. Not only does it optimize cognitive function, but it also actively shields the brain from damage caused by radiation. It's the next step in evolution, humans using technology to protect and enhance the mind in ways that were never possible before." Rachel was speechless. She had never imagined such a thing. It was one thing to protect the body from space's harsh conditions. It was another entirely to protect the brain, the organ that would be the most vulnerable on long-duration space missions. And now Musk had found a way to do just that. "But there's more," Musk added, his voice dropping slightly. "The radiation exposure also enhances certain neural pathways. In the right conditions, space radiation can actually help the brain evolve. The problem is, not everyone's brain reacts the same way. That's why some astronauts experience cognitive decline, while others show improvements in certain areas of thinking." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you telling me that space radiation isn't just harmful? That it can actually enhance the brain?" "Exactly," Musk said. "But it's a delicate balance. Too much exposure, and it's dangerous. Too little, and the brain doesn't get the benefit. Neuralink allows the brain to absorb just the right amount, enhancing its natural capacity to adapt to space. That's what we're really trying to unlock. We need to know how much radiation is optimal for cognitive enhancement. That's why this test was so important." Rachel's mind was spinning. She had spent years researching the negative effects of space radiation on the brain, studying how it caused memory loss and cognitive decline. Now Musk was telling her that the very same radiation could be used to enhance the brain, if only they could figure out how to harness it. The possibilities were mind-boggling. And you've been testing this technology on yourself? Rachel asked, her voice low. Musk nodded. Yes, I've been using Neuralink for a while now. The results have been enlightening. I believe we're on the cusp of a new era in human evolution. Rachel felt a surge of excitement mixed with deep unease. If Musk's theory was correct, and if they could refine the technology, it could change everything. Space exploration, human evolution, and even the nature of intelligence itself. But at what cost? What if they were pushing humanity into unknown territory that might change what it meant to be human? Before Rachel could respond, the door to the testing room opened and Dr. Samuel Rhodes entered. His face was pale and he looked unsettled. Rachel, Samuel said, his voice tense. We've got a problem. The backup power systems just went down. All the data, everything we've collected from the test, it's gone. We're not sure what happened, but we need to act fast. Rachel's stomach dropped. The test data was gone? After everything that had happened, after all the breakthroughs they had witnessed, everything was gone in an instant. Elon, she said, turning to face him. What's going on? Did you? Musk shook his head, his expression calm. It wasn't me, but I think I know what happened. Neuralink can generate an electromagnetic field when it's pushed to maximum performance. If it was working at full capacity during the test, it could have overloaded the building systems. Rachel stared at him, shocked. You mean your technology caused the power failure? Musk's expression remained unchanged. It wasn't intentional, but yes, it's possible. Rachel ran a hand through her hair, frustration building inside her. We can't afford this. We can't risk any more setbacks. But as she spoke, she realized something. The true breakthrough wasn't just about the test, or even the data they had lost. It was about the bigger picture, about what Musk had just revealed. The future of human space travel and cognitive enhancement wasn't just an abstract dream, it was already here. We'll have to recover the data, Rachel said, her voice steady despite the chaos around her. And then, we'll figure out what comes next. For all of us. The power failure had thrown everything into chaos. The emergency lights flickered dimly, casting long shadows over the control room, where Rachel and her team scrambled to recover the data from the test. The backup systems had failed when they were needed most, and the invaluable test results that would have provided crucial insight into Musk's cognitive performance, along with the unexpected technological revelations, were now at risk of being lost forever. Rachel felt a knot tighten in her stomach. The data wasn't just a test score. It was the key to understanding the true potential of Musk's brain, and more importantly, the future of human space exploration. If Musk's brain could truly adapt to deep space radiation, if Neuralink could not only protect the brain but enhance it, the implications were monumental. Elon, do you have any idea what caused the power surge? Samuel asked, his voice laced with frustration as he checked his tablet for updates. Musk remained calm, leaning against the wall, his usual confidence unwavering. I didn't cause it intentionally, he replied, his voice measured. But I think my Neuralink technology, running at full capacity during the test, created an electromagnetic field strong enough to interfere with the building systems. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Sorry doesn't cut it right now, Rachel snapped, frustration evident in her voice. We can't afford this kind of disruption. This test was too important. Elon's gaze softened, and for the first time, Rachel noticed a hint of empathy in his eyes. I understand. This technology is still in its early stages, but I'm willing to help you recover the data. We can work together to make sure everything's backed up properly. Rachel's thoughts raced. Musk had revealed a potential breakthrough, but the cost had been high. His technology had interfered with NASA's systems, causing a massive disruption. But as much as she wanted to be angry with him, she also realized that the future of space exploration might hinge on what Musk had just unlocked. If Neuralink could truly protect the brain from radiation while simultaneously enhancing cognitive function, the potential was limitless. But it was also a risk, a very big risk. All right, let's focus on getting the data back, Rachel said, taking a deep breath. She turned to Samuel. Can we restore the data from the servers? Samuel nodded, but his face was tense. We're trying, but there's no guarantee we'll get everything back. The power failure may have corrupted some of the files. We may have to start over. Rachel felt a sinking feeling in her chest. This was not just a test of Musk's cognitive ability. It was a test of humanity's ability to survive in deep space. And now the data that could make or break their mission was slipping through their fingers. Hours later, after the initial panic had subsided, Rachel stood alone in the testing room, staring at the now quiet screens that had once displayed real-time data. The team had managed to recover most of the test results, but they were far from complete. They hadn't captured every detail of Musk's brain activity, especially during the most critical sections of the test. She wasn't sure what to feel. On one hand, they had learned more about Musk's mind and Neuralink than they had anticipated. On the other, the risks of this technology were becoming clearer by the second. What if this electromagnetic interference was just the beginning of a series of unintended consequences? What if Neuralink wasn't as safe as Musk claimed? Rachel's phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from Dr. Lily Matthews. "We found something in the data. You need to see it." Rachel's pulse quickened as she hurried to Lily's office. As she entered, she saw Lily sitting at her desk, her eyes glued to her screen. "What did you find?" Rachel asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Lily didn't immediately respond. Instead, she tapped a few keys and the screen flickered before displaying a series of brain scans. Musk's scans from the test. The scans were almost mesmerizing, showing a level of neural activity that was off the charts. But what caught Rachel's eye was the distinct pattern in Musk's brain. It wasn't just an enhancement, it was something more. "What am I looking at, Lily?" Rachel asked, her voice low with disbelief. Lily pointed to the screen. "Look here, at the quantum relationship mapping section. We've seen enhanced brain activity before in astronauts who have been exposed to deep space radiation. But this is different. Musk's brain isn't just adapting to radiation exposure, it's thriving under it." Rachel's heart skipped a beat as she analyzed the data. "Are you saying that his brain is not only resisting radiation, but it's actually evolving because of it?" Lily nodded, her face pale. "Exactly. This isn't just about protecting the brain from damage. It's about using radiation to create new neural pathways. The technology it's making his brain stronger." Rachel stared at the screen, her mind racing. If Musk's brain was truly capable of evolving in this way, if Neuralink could harness this adaptation, it could change the course of space travel. Astronauts could not only survive the radiation of deep space, but potentially evolve beyond their current limits. They could become something more, something greater. But the question lingered in the back of Rachel's mind. At what cost? The next morning, the team gathered in the conference room, the mood heavy with anticipation. The findings from the test were unsettling, but there was no turning back now. The potential for this technology was beyond what any of them had imagined. Musk's Neuralink could offer a way to protect the brain from radiation while simultaneously enhancing cognitive function, but it was still in its early stages, and the risks were still unknown. As the team sat down, Rachel took a deep breath and addressed them. "We've uncovered something big. Musk's Neuralink has the potential to not only protect astronauts from deep space radiation, but to enhance their brains in ways we never thought possible. We're talking about evolving the human mind in real time, under the right conditions." There was a murmur of disbelief around the table, but Rachel pressed on. "But we also know that with great potential comes great risk. We need to move forward carefully. We don't fully understand the long-term effects of this technology on the human brain. We need to test it, but we need to do so responsibly." Musk, who had been quiet until now, finally spoke up. "I understand your concerns, Rachel, but you know as well as I do that space exploration requires risk. We can't afford to be cautious forever. We have to push the boundaries of what's possible." Rachel met his gaze, her heart heavy with the weight of their decision. "I agree, Elon, but we have to make sure we're not crossing a line we can't come back from." As the team discussed the next steps, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. They had discovered a new frontier in human evolution, but they had no idea where it would lead. One thing was certain: the future of space exploration would never be the same. Days passed in a blur of activity, with the team working tirelessly to analyze the data they had recovered from Elon Musk's test. Despite the setbacks caused by the power failure, the findings were undeniably groundbreaking. Musk's neural patterns were unlike anything Rachel had ever seen, and the implications of his enhanced brain function were becoming more clear with each passing day. But as the excitement began to settle, Rachel couldn't shake the feeling of unease that lingered in the back of her mind. The more she studied the data, the more she realized that they weren't just dealing with an advanced cognitive enhancement technology. What Musk had revealed went far beyond anything she had imagined. Neuralink wasn't just about improving brain function, it was about altering the very nature of human cognition. And that kind of power came with unknown consequences. As she sat in her office one evening, reviewing the latest scans, Rachel couldn't help but think back to her father. He had been one of the first astronauts to fly on deep space missions, and it had been his gradual decline, his cognitive breakdown, that had driven Rachel to pursue this path in the first place. The very thought that Musk's technology could prevent such a fate for future astronauts was both thrilling and terrifying. But the line between saving lives and inadvertently changing the essence of humanity was a thin one. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. "Come in," Rachel called, not looking up from her tablet. It was Samuel Rhodes, his face grim. "We need to talk." Rachel set the tablet down, her mind already bracing for what he was about to say. "What's going on?" "It's about the testing protocols," Samuel began, sitting down across from her. "The data we've recovered from Musk's brain scans. We're seeing something that we didn't expect." Rachel's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" Samuel hesitated for a moment, clearly trying to find the right words. "It's not just that his brain is adapting to the radiation, it's more than that. There are neural pathways being created that we've never seen before in any human brain. The brain is forming new connections, ones that are highly complex and specialized. The problem is, we don't know what this means for the long-term effects. The brain is evolving, Rachel, and we don't fully understand how." Rachel's thoughts raced. "You're saying his brain is actually changing, not just adapting to the radiation, but evolving into something different?" Samuel nodded, his expression somber. "Yes, this technology is capable of unlocking the brain's latent potential, but the consequences of that are unknown. What happens if it goes too far? What happens if this process accelerates beyond our control?" Rachel leaned back in her chair, her mind spinning. She had always believed in pushing the boundaries of science, but this was something entirely different. They were on the edge of a new era, one that could fundamentally alter human nature. But how far should they go? And who was responsible if things went wrong? Later that evening, Rachel found herself standing in front of the large observation window, staring out at the darkened sky. Mars was barely visible in the distance, a faint red dot hanging in the black void. The idea of sending humans there, of exploring a new world, had always been her dream. But now, with Musk's technology on the table, the mission was taking on a new, more unsettling significance. She was interrupted by a soft voice behind her. "Are you okay?" Rachel turned to see Elon Musk standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable. He had been quiet for the past few days, giving the team space to process the data and come to terms with the implications of his technology. But now, as the pressure of the decision weighed on her, she knew that he was here for a reason. "I'm fine," Rachel said, though her tone was uncertain. "Just thinking." "About the future?" Musk asked, stepping closer to her. Rachel nodded slowly. "About everything. The test, your technology, it's all moving so fast. We're on the verge of something big, Elon, but I'm not sure we're ready for it." Musk looked out at the stars for a moment, his eyes filled with a kind of quiet intensity. "Space is unforgiving. We can't afford to wait for the perfect moment. We need to move forward. This technology, it's not just a tool for space travel. It's a way to unlock the brain's potential, to push humanity to new heights. If we don't take this step now, we might never get the chance." Rachel turned back to the window, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. "But what if we're wrong? What if this is too much? Too soon? What if we're crossing a line that we can't come back from?" Musk's expression softened, and for the first time, he didn't seem quite so sure of himself. "I get it, Rachel. I understand the risks, but sometimes we have to take a leap of faith. If we don't push forward, we'll always be bound by the same limitations. We'll never know what we're truly capable of." Rachel sighed deeply, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. There was a part of her that wanted to believe Musk, that wanted to believe in the potential of Neuralink and the future it promised. But there was another part of her that feared what they might unleash. What if humanity wasn't ready for this kind of power? "I don't know if I can make this decision," Rachel admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we're playing with fire?" Musk took a step forward, his voice calm but firm. "We're not playing with fire, Rachel. We're harnessing it. The key to space exploration is the ability to adapt, to overcome the challenges that have held us back. Neuralink gives us that ability, but we need to act now, before someone else does." Rachel turned to face him, her expression conflicted. "You're asking me to risk everything, to risk humanity's future, for a chance at something greater." Musk's eyes met hers, and for a moment, there was no mistaking the sincerity in his gaze. "I'm asking you to take a chance, Rachel, to be part of something that will change the world. We can't wait for the perfect moment. We have to make our own moment, together." The decision weighed heavily on Rachel's mind over the next few days. The team continued to analyze the data, uncovering new insights into Musk's enhanced brain function. But the ethical dilemma remained unresolved. Should they proceed with testing Neuralink in deep space? Could they safely enhance the human brain without knowing the full consequences? In the end, the decision was clear, but it was not easy. The risks were enormous, but the potential for humanity's future in space was too great to ignore. Rachel knew that this was the moment that would define the future of space exploration. And whatever happened next, she would be ready to face it. The days following Rachel's conversation with Elon Musk felt like a whirlwind. The weight of the decision before her was heavy, almost unbearable. There was no turning back now, and every step forward felt like it could change the course of human history. Neuralink had already proven its potential, but the implications of enhancing the human brain to adapt to the extreme conditions of deep space were profound, and the risks were something they could not fully grasp. Rachel sat alone in her office late one evening, staring at the pile of research papers and brain scans spread out on her desk. She felt torn. On the one hand, there was the undeniable promise of a technology that could unlock the full potential of the human mind, enabling astronauts to survive and thrive in the harshest environments. On the other hand, there was the nagging fear that they were rushing headlong into something they couldn't control. What if this enhancement led to something worse than cognitive decline? What if the human mind was fundamentally changed by the radiation? She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, trying to center herself. She had been given the opportunity to shape humanity's future. But what if that future wasn't what anyone expected? There was a knock at the door, interrupting her thoughts. "Come in," Rachel called, her voice hoarse from hours of contemplation. It was Dr. Samuel Rhodes, his face as serious as she had ever seen it. He stood in the doorway, hands clasped behind his back, looking like a man who had also been wrestling with the same heavy burden. "We need to talk," he said simply, his voice low. Rachel gestured for him to sit. "About what?" "The next step," Samuel replied, his tone deliberate. "We've been analyzing the data more closely, and there's something we need to discuss. I think we're at a tipping point." Rachel sat back in her chair, folding her arms across her chest. "I'm listening." Samuel took a deep breath, his gaze steady as he spoke. "Musk's Neuralink technology, what it's doing to his brain is beyond anything we imagined. It's not just about cognitive enhancement anymore. We're seeing changes that go beyond the simple adaptation to space radiation. His brain is forming entirely new neural pathways, ones that aren't just resistant to radiation, but seem to be benefiting from it." Rachel nodded slowly, already knowing the implications of what Samuel was saying. The radiation is enhancing his brain. It's not just preventing damage, it's making him better. Samuel looked uneasy, clearly reluctant to voice the concern that had been gnawing at him. "Exactly. But here's the thing. The changes aren't just isolated to Musk. The neural pathways that are being created could be transferable. What if, when astronauts are exposed to radiation over extended periods, their brains don't just survive? What if they evolve into something we can't predict? And worse, what if it's something we can't control?" Rachel's mind was already racing. She had thought about this, of course. What if Neuralink, while seeming like a miracle in the short term, triggered a long-term transformation in human cognition that they couldn't reverse. What if this technology altered the essence of what it meant to be human? We're on the edge of something huge, Samuel continued, but we don't know what's on the other side. If we go forward with this, we're not just changing the future of space exploration. We're changing the future of humanity itself. Rachel closed her eyes, trying to process everything. The idea of enhancing the human brain to such an extent was both thrilling and terrifying. But was it right? Was it ethical? Could they really justify such a monumental leap without understanding the full scope of its consequences? "Do you think we should stop?" Rachel asked, her voice quiet but firm. Samuel shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we need to proceed carefully. If we do this, we need to make sure we're not making irreversible changes. We don't know what these enhancements will do in the long run, especially with something as dangerous as space radiation involved. But I also understand the other side of this. The Mars mission, humanity's first real step beyond Earth. It depends on making this technology work." Rachel took a deep breath. There was no easy answer. She had been trained to make decisions based on logic and data. But this felt different. This wasn't just about science. This was about humanity's future. "I think we need to move forward," Rachel said finally, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision. "But we need to do so with caution. We'll continue the tests, but we'll monitor everything. We need a contingency plan in case something goes wrong." Samuel nodded, visibly relieved that they were on the same page. "Agreed, but we also need to be transparent with the public. We can't afford to keep everything under wraps forever. If this works, we need the world to be ready for it." Rachel's gaze shifted to the window again, her thoughts turning to Mars. It was so close, just beyond the reach of the human eye, but so far away in terms of the challenges that lay ahead. Could they truly prepare humanity for what was coming? Could they really make space travel safe for the next generation of astronauts? "I'll contact Elon," Rachel said, standing up. "We'll need his full cooperation. If we're going to proceed, we have to be united in this." Hours later, Rachel sat across from Elon in a small conference room, the weight of the conversation still hanging in the air. The two of them had been through a lot over the past few days, and now with the decision made, it was time to chart the course forward. "Elon," Rachel began, her voice steady, "we've decided to move forward with the Neuralink technology in the Mars mission. But we need to be clear about one thing. We're doing this with full transparency. The world is going to know what we're doing. We can't afford to keep this a secret anymore." Elon's eyes gleamed with a quiet intensity. "I've been waiting for this moment," he said simply. "The world needs to see what we can accomplish when we push the boundaries of what's possible. Neuralink isn't just about enhancing brains, it's about the future of space, the future of humanity." Rachel met his gaze, her expression resolute. "I agree, but we're doing this carefully. We'll start small, and we'll monitor every step. This isn't just about science, it's about ethics, about responsibility." Elon nodded slowly, his smile fading into something more serious. "I understand. I'll work with you to ensure the process is as transparent as possible. But let's be clear, this is the future, and the future starts now." Rachel felt a shiver run down her spine. This was it. They were on the cusp of something monumental. The decision had been made. There was no turning back. As she stood up and walked out of the room, she looked back once more at Elon. In his eyes, she saw the same determination she had seen in her own father all those years ago. The same fire that had driven him to space, and the same fire that was now pushing them all into uncharted territory. They were about to step into the unknown, together. The decision had been made. After days of analysis, debate, and careful consideration, Rachel and her team had decided to move forward with Elon Musk's Neuralink technology. The implications of their choice were enormous, not just for the future of space exploration, but for the future of humanity itself. And while Elon was eager to move ahead, Rachel knew that they had to proceed carefully, cautiously, and with full transparency. There was no going back now. The preparations for the Mars mission had entered a new phase. Neuralink would be at the heart of it, but that didn't mean it would be easy. Rachel had seen the data, the brain scans, and the neural patterns that Musk's technology had unlocked. What had initially appeared to be a simple enhancement had become something far more complicated. A technology that didn't just protect the brain from space radiation, but actually enhanced its abilities, allowing it to adapt in ways that were previously thought impossible. But with that enhancement came the unknown. What would happen to astronauts whose brains had been altered, who had been exposed to space radiation and enhanced by it? Would they evolve into something entirely new, something that was no longer purely human? Those were the questions that haunted Rachel as she stood before the assembled team, preparing to present their plan for the next steps. The weight of their decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. Today, they were taking the first steps into uncharted territory, and the entire world would be watching. "All right, everyone," Rachel began, her voice steady but filled with the gravity of the moment. "We've made the decision to proceed with Neuralink for the Mars mission, but we have to do this carefully. We are embarking on a journey that will change the way we understand space travel and possibly human evolution itself." The room was filled with the sharp hum of the team's eager minds, their faces a mix of excitement and apprehension. Samuel Rhodes, the director of the division, nodded grimly. "Rachel's right," he said. "This isn't just a technological breakthrough, it's a societal shift. We need to think about the long-term impact of what we're doing here. This isn't just about making space travel safer, it's about what happens to humanity when we begin altering the fundamental nature of the brain. What if the cognitive enhancements we're making now lead to unforeseen consequences down the line?" Rachel glanced around the room, her gaze lingering on the faces of her colleagues. They were all in agreement. No one could deny the promise of Neuralink, but no one could ignore the risks either. The possibility of cognitive enhancements evolving into something far greater than anticipated was daunting. "I know the risks," Rachel said, her voice calm but resolute. "But if we don't do this now, we risk falling behind. The potential for human survival in space, especially on Mars, is too important to ignore. We can't afford to wait. We have to proceed, safely but boldly." Lily Matthews, who had been at the forefront of the test analysis, spoke up. "What about the radiation experiments we're running? We still don't fully understand how exposure to that kind of radiation will affect the brain over time. We've seen enhancements, but we haven't seen long-term effects. The changes we're seeing in Musk's brain might be unprecedented, but we need more data." Rachel nodded. "That's why we'll start small. We won't be sending fully enhanced astronauts to Mars right away. We'll begin with controlled testing, using a smaller group of volunteers who will undergo extensive monitoring during their training and mission preparation. We'll expose them to the radiation, and we'll carefully track every change in their cognitive function," Samuel interjected. "And we'll need a full ethical review before we begin. We can't just push forward without understanding the potential consequences for the volunteers. They'll be taking a huge risk." Rachel turned to face him. "I agree, but we also can't waste time. We need approval, but we also need results. The longer we wait, the greater the risk that other nations or private companies will leap ahead of us." Elon Musk, who had been quietly listening from the back of the room, stepped forward, his eyes alight with determination. "I've been working on this for years," he said. "Neuralink is more than just a technology for space travel. It's about unlocking human potential, helping us adapt, helping us evolve. We can't afford to let fear hold us back. This is the future, Rachel. The world's future." Rachel met his gaze. She knew what he meant. She had seen the promise in the data, the possibility of sending humans beyond the confines of Earth's atmosphere, making long-term space travel not just a dream, but a reality. But was it worth the risk? Would humanity, as it was, be ready for the challenges that lay ahead? "What happens when we evolve too far, Elon?" she asked. "What happens when we push the limits of human cognition and start to change the essence of what makes us human? Can we come back from that?" Musk's expression softened slightly. "We won't be changing what it means to be human, Rachel. We'll be expanding it. There's nothing wrong with evolving into something greater. The mind is capable of far more than we know, and we won't know until we push it to its limits." Rachel wasn't entirely convinced, but she knew that Musk was right about one thing. The future of space exploration depended on this. Humanity's survival, the Mars mission, and the quest to explore other worlds rested on this technology. But the question remained, How far should they go? Could they handle the consequences? The days that followed were filled with preparation. The team worked tirelessly to put the plans in action, finalizing the details of the neural enhancement tests, preparing the astronauts for their upcoming mission, and securing ethical approvals for the volunteer group. The first group of enhanced astronauts would undergo extensive radiation exposure simulations on Earth before being sent into space. It was a delicate process, one that had never been attempted before. As the mission date loomed closer, Rachel stood in the observation room, watching the team prepare. Samuel and Lily were reviewing the data from the previous tests, making sure everything was in order. The astronauts, who had been selected for the first round of Neuralink enhancements, were undergoing training in the next room, preparing for the simulations that would expose them to radiation levels similar to those they would experience in space. Rachel felt the weight of it all. This was no longer just a test. It was real. The fate of the astronauts, the future of humanity's space exploration ambitions, and the long-term consequences of Neuralink technology were all tied to what happened in the next few months. The first crew to undergo the enhancement would be the test subjects, the pioneers who would determine whether this bold step forward would be a success or a failure. "Ready?" Samuel asked, stepping up beside her. Rachel nodded, her gaze still fixed on the training room. "Ready as we'll ever be." The first round of tests would begin in just a few days, but Rachel couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to cross a threshold, one that could change the course of human history. She wasn't sure if they were ready for what they were about to uncover, but she knew one thing for certain. The future had already begun, and there was no turning back. The atmosphere at NASA headquarters had changed. There was a sense of quiet anticipation in the air, as though the entire facility was holding its breath, waiting for the next step to unfold. Rachel and the rest of the team had done everything in their power to prepare for this moment, the first official trials using Neuralink technology in a deep space simulation. The astronauts selected for this mission had undergone rigorous training, both physical and mental, and now as they prepared for radiation exposure, it felt as though the world was teetering on the edge of something monumental. Rachel sat in the command center, surrounded by monitors displaying real-time data from the astronauts' training simulations. The radiation chambers had been designed to replicate the conditions astronauts would face on their journey to Mars. Constant exposure to space radiation, without the protection of Earth's atmosphere. This was their final test before the mission itself. It was now or never. She looked up at the large screen in front of her, where the faces of the astronauts appeared on the feed, each of them wearing the Neuralink headsets. Their brains were about to be exposed to the radiation, and Rachel couldn't help but wonder, what would happen? Would the enhancements work as they hoped? Would the astronauts evolve in ways they couldn't predict? Or would they push too far and find themselves in uncharted and dangerous territory? "Ready, Rachel?" Samuel's voice broke through her thoughts. Rachel nodded, though she still wasn't sure what she was ready for. The next few hours would define everything. "I'm ready," she replied, though her words felt heavy with uncertainty. The first astronaut stepped into the radiation chamber. The countdown began. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The chamber's door closed with a soft hiss, and the astronauts were exposed to radiation levels that no human had ever withstood for extended periods. As the simulation began, Rachel's team monitored every aspect of the astronauts' brain activity. The real-time data flowed in, showing neural patterns that were, as expected, unlike anything they had seen before. The astronauts' brains were not only adapting to the radiation, they were thriving under it, forming new, enhanced neural pathways, just as they had seen in Elon Musk's tests. But as the minutes ticked by, something unexpected happened. The data began to show a troubling spike in certain areas of the brain. In some of the astronauts, the enhanced neural activity was escalating rapidly, pushing the limits of what their brains could handle. The neural pathways weren't just adapting, they were growing stronger, faster, almost uncontrollably. The question was no longer about whether the brain could handle space radiation. It was about whether it could sustain such rapid evolution. "Something's wrong," Lily's voice was sharp as she studied the data. "The neural activity is spiking. The system is compensating faster than we anticipated." Rachel's heart raced. She leaned closer to the screen, watching as the data showed the astronauts' cognitive function exceeding normal human limits. The system had been designed to monitor the brain and keep it within a safe range, but now the readings were dangerously close to crossing that threshold. "Elon," Rachel said, turning to him, "what's happening? The neural pathways are developing too quickly." Musk's face was grim, but his voice remained steady. "It's the radiation. It's accelerating the brain's adaptation process. Neuralink was designed to enhance cognitive function, but it's never been exposed to this kind of stimulus. If we push too hard, it could lead to long-term neurological damage. Or worse, the brain could become too evolved for us to understand." Rachel felt a chill run through her. They had taken a huge step forward, but now they were facing the very real possibility that they might have overestimated the brain's ability to evolve safely. "Is there any way to stop it?" Rachel asked. "Shut down the radiation exposure immediately," Musk said, his voice tinged with urgency. "We need to bring the astronauts out of the chamber now." The team scrambled to override the system and shut down the radiation exposure. The astronauts were quickly removed from the chamber, and the real-time data began to stabilize. But Rachel could see the concern on the faces of her team as they examined the scans. The astronauts appeared to be physically unharmed, but the long-term effects were uncertain. Could their brains handle the evolution they had just undergone? Or had they gone too far? Achel approached the astronauts one by one as they were monitored by medical staff. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. The first astronaut, Commander Anna Fitzgerald, blinked a few times as if processing her surroundings. "It's strange," she said, her voice steady but distant. "I feel more aware. Everything is clearer, but I also feel overwhelmed, like my mind is trying to keep up with what's happening to it." Rachel nodded, trying to hide the concern that rose in her chest. It was clear that the neural enhancements had worked, but at what cost? Had the astronauts' cognitive abilities been enhanced beyond what their minds could handle? "We need to monitor their responses closely," Rachel said to the medical team. "I want continuous brain scans for the next 48 hours. Let's see how they stabilize." As the astronauts were led away for observation, Rachel turned back to the command center. She felt a knot in her stomach. The data was promising, but the dangers were too real. They were standing at the edge of something unprecedented, a human mind evolving in real time under the influence of radiation. What they had just tested could change humanity forever, but they had no idea what the long-term consequences would be. Days passed as the astronauts recovered from the simulation. The data was carefully analyzed, and Rachel couldn't ignore the growing unease in her chest. The enhanced cognitive abilities were undeniable, but the risks were still too unknown. She and the team had to make a decision. Elon Musk was the first to break the silence. "This is the future, Rachel," he said quietly, standing beside her in the observation room. "We've unlocked the potential for humans to survive and adapt to deep space. This is just the beginning. The next step is sending these astronauts to Mars." Rachel turned to him, her eyes filled with a mixture of awe and fear. "But at what cost, Elon? What if they've evolved too far? What if we've lost the essence of what it means to be human?" Musk's eyes softened, and for the first time he seemed unsure. "I don't have all the answers, Rachel, but I know one thing. We can't stop now. This is humanity's future. We have to take that step, and we need to do it now." Rachel took a deep breath. She had always been driven by a desire to push the boundaries of science, to unlock the potential of human exploration. But now, as she looked at the astronauts in the recovery room, she realized that what they were about to do was more than just a scientific achievement. It was a new chapter in human evolution. "We're ready," she said quietly, more to herself than anyone else. "But we need to proceed with caution. We'll send them to Mars, but we'll continue to monitor every step of the way. This is the moment where we either evolve as a species or we fall into something we can't control." The Mars mission was launched a few months later, with the enhanced astronauts aboard. The world watched as humanity took its first step toward colonizing another planet, with Neuralink technology at the forefront of this historic journey. But the question of human evolution, of what it meant to enhance the mind and adapt to the challenges of space, lingered in the back of Rachel's mind. Would they truly thrive in the harsh environment of Mars? Or had they altered humanity in ways that could never be undone? Only time would tell.